Today, I'd like to talk to you about the challenges of staffing remote location positions, particularly in the mining industry. My name is Jamie Rogers. I'm the VP of Operations with Western Protection Alliance. This is a many-layered subject, but I'd like to touch on a few points right up front. The first thing I'd like to discuss is suitability. So you're really recruiting for suitability more than for qualifications. Typically, in the mining industry, if you're employing a security person or a first aid person, a paramedic, it's not just about what they're able to do, it's about what type of person they are and what their home life is about, really. So touching on home life, the first thing to consider is this individual is going to be working for 2-week rotations, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off typically. So they're going to be away from their home for 2 weeks at a time, plus travel quite often. So often they be away for better part of 16 days in the month. So their family life has to support that type of employment. An example, if they have a young family, some children, there's birthdays, there's appointments, there's sports, there's different things that come tied to a young family. And that can be very challenging for somebody that's having to work for 2 weeks at a time away from their family. The other thing to consider when we're talking about home life is the relationship itself with your partner. If you do have a relationship and you're in a couple, the relationship has to be that of some level of stability. If it's a new relationship or relatively new, it's often quite difficult for somebody to be stationed in a remote location camp for 2 weeks at a time. Even if they have regular communication, it's quite often difficult for somebody to be able to be away from their partner for that extended length of time. Therefore, it's quite often very suitable for somebody who's in a very stable long-term relationship, or even somebody that's retired. Often if the person's retired, it's better for the relationship when they get a break from each other. But those types of things should be considered when you're looking at suitability for a remote location placement. Another thing to consider when choosing an appropriate employee for a remote location position is health. You're away from civilization for 2 weeks at a time. There may be a paramedic, or you may be a paramedic yourself working at one of these camps. However, if you have any sort of health concerns, health anxiety can be a real challenge for people that are stationed in a remote location environment. Picture yourself laying in bed in the first week of your rotation and you're not feeling well, or you have some sort of concern that makes you wonder what it might be. And without being able to potentially make a doctor's appointment the next day or call 911 and go to the hospital, the anxiety can build rather quickly. So therefore, it's challenging if you have health concerns when you're working in a remote location environment. The other part relating to health suitability is that you're working quite often long shifts, 12 hours at a time, quite often for 14 days. And that can really take a toll on somebody who isn't healthy and needs additional rest. In addition to that, quite often you're on your feet for extended periods of time. You're having to deal with challenging environments, be it snow that you have to walk through or icy conditions, or something as simple as having to take your boots off and on multiple times in a day, which is quite often one of the policies within the camps. These little things don't seem like they're something very challenging for most people, but if you're working in a remote location camp, you can find these small things quite challenging. Another point that should be considered when choosing remote location personnel is social ability. Social ability is very important when you're working in a small group environment. Small group environment in a camp can mean 200 people. It could mean 300 people. It's not a town, it's a camp. And quite often, if you're in this type of environment, it's almost like a dysfunctional family. You're seeing the same people over and over again, day after day. And if you don't have the social wherewithal to be able to interact with these different types of personalities, it can be very challenging for people, particularly when you can't escape that environment. Finally, for this video, I'd like to touch on the self-administering aspect of personnel in the remote location camps. Quite often, personnel, be it security or medical personnel, find themselves in an environment that's lacking any sort of support structure around them. And really the decision making is done right then and there with them. And quite often there's things that happen that you just don't see coming. And you really need to have somebody that's able to self-administer in order to properly function in these remote location environments. There's a number of different things that I could continue to speak to in relation to placing personnel in remote location camps based on suitability. But really, successful remote location staffing depends on more than just filling a schedule. It requires selection of personnel based on many factors. If you'd like more information in relation to this, feel free to reach out to me directly at 604-271-7475, or you can email me at rogers@westernalliance.ca. And don't forget to like and subscribe.